All right, we are joined live here just after the market close on this historic and crazy day.
Yes, exciting.
Emmet, what's going on, man?
Man, just a lot of build up for today, and it was interesting to watch that last half hour, or 45 minutes, especially from the open, and then the last half hour was roller coaster ride, right? I mean, what were you thinking the whole
Oh
time?
man, it was crazy, crazy, crazy.
Yeah,
Lots of ups and downs there. um,
yeah,
First off, disclaimer for everyone: this is not investment advice, financial advice in any manner. This is just two guys chatting on our opinions, personal opinions. Yeah, make up your own minds. So that said, yeah. So for those who don't know what's going on, they're like, "Why is Dave doing a live stream?" Tesla just finished their last trading day before S&P 500 inclusion. So they are going to be included in the S&P 500 index at the start of trading on Monday. But today was the first or the last final day that people can get in or can get in for the trading or to buy Tesla
hmm
shares for the index. And we're talking about like 100 and what 15 to 20 million shares, I think, need to be bought. And most of the indexers want the exact price that it closes at, right? That's their goal. They don't want to be higher or lower. And so this was a big, huge tactical game by the market and and thousands of people trying to figure out how to take advantage and how to, optimize the situation. So what was going through your mind? I'm curious about the last 30 minutes or so.
I mean, there's so much build up to this, and I was very pleasantly surprised that the infrastructure of the markets was able to handle this, given all the flash crashes of the past and systems going down, freezing. Nasdaq could have froze, or who knows. I thought there was a chance like things would break. Like I thought that there was a significant chance. This is like one of the biggest trading activity days I think in a long time. You see sometimes these IPOs, and they're supposed to IPO at like 9:30, close to the open, and then they, 'cause there's so much activity, they have to delay it, and they can't really get they can't get the order book right and matched up properly until like the afternoon or lunchtime, and so this is sort of the reverse of that in a way, but it was all going down real time, and it was still trading continuously throughout that whole period, and it was done so much quicker towards that close, and it was just very, it was interesting to watch, and I think a lot. I could be wrong, but I thought the imbalance at the end. I was watching Rob Maurer's live stream before this. Towards the end, it was helpful that he did that, and I did a trade on my own IRA account, like while I was watching him, for example, and it was easier to do stuff while I'm multitask while I'm just listening to him do it. And I think there was an imbalance at the close still. Like, wasn't there like 13 million shares or something that, imbalance that never got resolved? Or maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I saw something like that's been so quick after it happened.
Yeah,
Right
I
now we
mean,
can't.
to recap what happened in the past like 30, 40 minutes, I mean, the stock was trading at like a decent amount, like 660-ish or 670-ish for a long
Yeah.
time. And then about half an hour before market close or something, it just tanks. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes down to 650, 640, I think 630. And what were you thinking at that time?
Well, that's when I bought in my IRA account, which I had a lot of cash on hand
Hmm.
just because I sold half that original position last Friday. So I hadn't used that cash. And so I just bought some call options for, January 15th again, because I do think there's a lot of buying left to be done. And I think the benchmark funds and closet indexers are going to have the pressure on to really start purchasing some Tesla. Maybe some of them are hoping that there'd be a drop after this inclusion, they could buy it cheaper. And when that's not the case, they're going to have even more pressure to start buying, so I think that's just my opinion. I could be wrong.
Hmm.
Could, the stock could start tanking quickly now
Sure.
after this.
What did you do the 700 strikes again? January 15th?
No, I did 900.
900, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, they were like six. I was buying them at like $6 around that price
Really?
level, and just in my IRA account,
Yeah.
tax free if I do well, and I'm not sure it'll even expire in the money, but I
Yeah.
think if the price rises, 100 or $200 the next 2 weeks, you can make I can make a nice return on that trade potentially. And if not,
Yeah.
I lost 5 or 10% of my IRA account.
Just 5 or 10%.
That's how we do this. That's how I do it. That's how we talked about, right? I
Yeah,
take these
exactly.
calculated 5 or 10%
Yeah.
chances with
I
mine.
mean, it's crazy because when the stock is dropping, like 20, 30 points just in a few minutes down to 630, I'm sure most people, I mean, myself included, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it feels like the whole thesis is just crashing down in terms of
Yeah.
like maybe, people, the market knows better or the selling has happened and there won't be a end of, day bounce or something. Um, and it seems like that's the time to panic, for most people. And that's the time to sell or something. But what goes through your mind to do the opposite at that moment?
Yeah. Um, the, can you hear me okay, by the way? You got a little
Yeah,
choppy.
it's kind of
Is it okay can you hear me?
it's kind of breaking up a little bit. Um, don't know. It might be actually my. Well, actually, no, I'm doing okay. Um,
Okay, now I see you again a little better. Can you? These live
yeah,
streams are a little difficult sometimes. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it might be my computer actually. Hmm.
Could be mine, but anyway, I can see you now and I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay now again?
Yeah,
So,
it's actually I think it's my recording, my live broadcasting software. Yeah.
all right. Well, I can talk, or do you want to call me
Yeah.
back real quick?
Yeah. Keep on talking. If it gets bad, then I'll have to call you back or
Okay.
restart my
Okay.
thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, when the market was going down so fast, I just knew like it could continue crashing, right? But on the alternate side, could rip back up, towards the close at the end of the day when all the imbalance stuff starts happening, 10 or 20 minutes before the close. So as it was like at this going through 650 and negative in the 640s, I was just putting in a bunch of orders, stepping down, trying to buy some of those contracts at lower and lower prices as it was going down. And I was underwater at one point. I think my lowest fill was like $6 or 5.75 or something like that. And I think it got down to like 550 or something. And I was like, that's as much as I can buy. I'm comfortable risking. And I wasn't sure, maybe the stock was going to keep tanking and the option would get less and less. But I also knew that, you know, Monday and next week and the week after, going into the end of the year, there's going to be some pressure to buy. Like a lot of people that are waiting to sell, I feel like they probably might have done that up to now, right? That's just my guess, is my hunch is all the institutions or speculators that are like just trying to play a short-term play on this trade. I feel like they probably all thought this is the time to sell, right? And so I just think that's been exhausted. And then next couple of weeks, those short-term speculating sellers are gone. And who's going to sell to people who want to buy then, right?
Yeah.
That's just my guess. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, everything is a guess. I mean,
Yeah.
but I find it fascinating that I think it's probably instinctual to you by now, where rather than just doing the typical emotional response, like, the stock drops 40 points or something in a matter of 10 minutes, people are freaking out.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's like instinctual now, where you're just like, okay, what's the other side? Like,
Yeah. And it also has to do with the fact that I'm not, I haven't been fully like some people might be so fully vested where it's like scary seeing your account balance drop, if you're doing an options trade on your full, like we talked about last time, like you have to take smaller bets on this stuff and then have some reserves to like, dry powder to like put on a new trade or new, when conditions get even better for what you're thinking long term or medium term.
yeah, I know you trimmed your position, your initial January 15 700 strike calls. So you sold half of them, I think, end of last week. So are you
Yep.
still holding on to them, or what's the
Yeah,
status?
still holding on to them. It's ironic. I sold them last week and Friday, and I'm just looking at the price right now, and I think that they are. Well, they're a little bit underwater. They're almost the same price as what I sold them at, even though the stock's gone up,
Yeah.
40 or 70, $60, because they're actually almost the same price. Like they've been plus or minus $5 the whole week. It's like I feel like maybe $10, but I think I sold them at like 41 something, and I think they've been plus or minus, $5 or $10 that most of this week. So
Yeah. What are they at right now?
I'm looking at the last trade
Mm-hmm.
shows $34.
34. Okay.
Yeah, of this particular call option, but it was as high as
Yeah.
$45 earlier today, or $52 earlier today.
When
So
yeah,
it's going back and forth.
when it was down, the stock price was at like what 7 or 6.30. How much down do you think those your
Yeah, that's
calls
when I
were?
think it was at $32 today.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
only 32. Okay,
yeah,
it's not bad.
and it looks like it's a close. It closed around 34, but I think it should really close. I think I think it'll open if the stock opens at 695, like where it closed. I think it'll probably open
Mm.
Monday. I'm guessing just ballpark between 40 and 50. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
maybe above 50. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, what is that position worth right now? Like 7 million or something? Eight?
yeah. I mean, well, I think it's like 1,700 contract. Let me think.
Mm-hmm.
I have three accounts, so it's like
Yeah.
I'm doing the math in my head of how many each account has. So I think it's like 1,200. I think it's 1,800 contracts left, I want to
Okay.
say.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so 1,800 contracts times like $40. What's that, like 7 or 8 million? Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
notional the total value of the premium. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm thinking like when the stock's dropping, 30, 40 points in a matter of minutes,
yeah,
your options are dropping a lot,
yeah.
right? So it's
And
like,
like we talked about, like if that was my whole account, like it would be so stressful. But
but
because
yeah, but then
it's a
your
lot of money, yeah,
yeah, but then your stock is dropping too, and
yeah,
your
all
leaps, which
dropping.
you're carrying over over 100,000 shares of exposure to Tesla, right? So if the
Yes,
stock drops 40 points, we're talking about $4 million just in your stock and leaps, right?
yeah.
And then your options calls are dropping, let's say, I don't know how much. And like, do you think about that at all at that moment, or just like push it aside?
I used to think about it, but I've gone through this so much now. It's like I'm numb to it. Like I take a more medium term view.
Hmm.
Like in a given day, I've seen big swings in P&L on my account. And been
Yeah,
stressed
yeah.
out about it many times. Where now I've sort of just realized, like, I don't even look at my P&L a lot of days. Even when it's up, I don't want to look at my account values sometimes. So I'm like, all right, I know it's up. I don't want to just like have a number in my head that I'm comparing to all the time. So,
Yeah.
once a week or once a month, I'll look at them now. And, if the stock's been moving a lot, then I'll start looking at it and paying attention and be like, okay, maybe I should think about doing something. But, yeah, I used to look at my P&L and account values like all day, every day, but now I look at the stock price every day, all day. But I try not to like, look at the account
Yeah,
values all.
that's so interesting because I do the same thing. Like
Mm.
it was like I used to be able to like, quickly transfer the stock price to kind of my portfolio or loss or
Yeah,
gain of the day. But then after seeing like so many extreme moves up and down over the years, something happened where I kind of disconnected that in my mind. I purposely disconnected it,
yeah,
where
yeah,
I
yeah.
look at the
The
stock price.
emotional
Yeah. And
reaction.
so I
Yeah,
look at the stock price for what the stock price is. And then
yeah,
I kind of like do this mental block on the portfolio, and the effects on the portfolio. I have a different kind of maybe equation that's not calculating today's stock price. It's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a different,
You
yeah.
kind of like have like a high water mark in your mind of your portfolio, and
Hmm.
maybe it's way above that now. And I don't know. I know what you're saying. Like you just kind of disconnect that measurement of your own portfolio constantly to the
Yeah, yeah. Because I
stocks.
think after seeing so many ups and downs like over the years, I've realized that's not a true indicator of it's not there. It's not doesn't carry much value, for me.
Yeah. And it
Um,
sounds so counterintuitive,
yeah,
right? It seems so counterintuitive. Like, what? You're not looking at your account value? Well, that's ridiculous, But
exactly.
you know, you and I, we talk about Tesla, the stock, and, you know, we place our bets accordingly, but we're really just believers on the company long term and medium term. And sometimes we have some short term bets within that. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I think you and I are like long term shares, and we know that's our breadwinner and long term, and the short term bets aren't as important in the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah. Today, going into the close, it was kind of the last 10 minutes. At 12:50, the NASDAQ announced or disseminates any imbalance. And so that's when you saw the stock shoot up, I think probably 640 to like 660 just in like a few seconds. And then it starts trading all over the place for about 10 minutes. And then at the close, it
was like at 660 or 655 for a long time. And then there was like a print suddenly really high up
of
at
like 695.
I was like, what? 50 million shares, 675? And then after market, it's immediately trading again at 675. And like now it's 680.
It goes from 661. It prints the 695 close, it seems like. But then it starts trading like 678, 68 or whatever on there. I'm like, what just happened before our eyes? You know, it's like...
Something weird happened. There was like a huge arbitrage opportunity that was missed, I feel like, by a lot of people. It was so big that all the arbitrage folks couldn't even figure it out, I feel like, because it was such a big difference, you know?
Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. I mean, I don't know what happened there. I mean, it seems though, like I share your I guess, respect for the system in the sense that things worked out, you know, you don't see this crazy, you know, I don't know, short circuiting of the system. I think it handled brilliantly. You know? I mean, it worked out well. You know, all the indexers got their, you know, probably their shares. Do you think that some indexers might need to buy on Monday, or, I mean, what's your take?
I think there's a very high chance that there's a lot left. A lot meaning anywhere from 10% to 40%, maybe 50%. I don't know, but there's a lot. I think there's a high chance that there's a significant amount of shares that some of the index funds still need to purchase, you know, and they couldn't get all of it going into today. That's my gut. I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, hopefully we'll see some analysis over the weekend on that.
I know I kind of wonder if maybe they'll try in after hours, but then if they try too hard in after hours, if they come up short, then they would bump the price too much. So maybe they're like, okay, we can't bump the price too much. So
I wouldn't be surprised if some of these funds are like not even allowed to trade after hours too. Maybe they're required to trade only during market hours. I don't know. I mean, some of these prospectuses say different things, but after hours, typically there's not a lot of volume. You know, there's a lot of market participants that leave.
Yeah. Like I would imagine there's probably, if you had to guess one way, was there an oversupply of shares or undersupply? You'd probably have to guess there was a slight undersupply because, you know, it jumped
so much in the close,
in the final 10 minutes, and then right after the close, it jumped into after hours. So it's showing probably there was some type of, you know, undersupply or something of shares, but we'll see. Yeah, I mean,
I want to see what it trades like now. It's like, you know, I think Rob on his live stream said something about like, oh, I can't wait for this to be over. And I kind of feel the same thing. Like it's been so like an emotional, like fun ride, but at some point you want to have like, all right, let's just get to reality again. And
seriously.
but I'm so curious to see what happens on Monday morning pre-market, and then how the day goes on Monday into the close, even on Monday. You know, if there's a big imbalance order on Monday, even, you know, for the leftovers, you know, that's what I'm really curious. So it's like continues, like a never-ending saga here with this S&P rebalance, right? It's just, I feel like it's going to keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching some of Rob's live stream earlier too, and I saw that segment where he was kind of beat up and tired. And I was like, I mean, Rob's put so much into it, you know, he's like really been tracking all the stuff. So I feel
it's hard when you do it, like me and you were talking at the same time. Like I can kind of look at my price when you're talking and listen to you, but he's doing it all himself, like trying to call Fidelity and like try and manage the screens. I'm like, man, this guy's he's a hard worker, this guy. He's doing
definitely.
What he's supposed to do. Yeah,
I was gonna like text him and say, hey Rob, if you want, I could join you to take off some of the load, you know, so you can maybe look at some of your trades. trades or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, no, he's a
But
good guy. I mean, I don't know him personally really, but I can
yeah.
tell he's a hard worker and just trying to do what he thinks is right. So that's good.
Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate Rob.
Yeah.
I had to actually take a step back. I only watched about 10 minutes, so I had to take a step back because like I kind of like the distance from the noise and people and
Mm.
reactions, and just try to think through things. Needing to make some final decisions with some trades I had on, and yeah. So yeah, I think that's my first reaction is I get into the noise a little bit to see,
Yeah.
and then I pull back and I
Yeah, I
try to
noticed you said that you do that with the quarterly reports even, right? You
yeah.
you you kind of like you get the letter and then you want to read it alone and quiet by yourself first, right? To kind of
Exactly.
away from
Yeah.
the noise.
Yeah.
That's smart.
There's something about it where, like, I've noticed over the years, the crowd. There's something about the crowd that has power and emotions,
Mm.
and they tend to interpret the situation emotionally, and that becomes the predominant, like interpretation, and
Yeah.
it's kind of almost ingrained as the truth of how to interpret the situation. But then when you take a step back and you get rid of all the emotion, sometimes you spot out some things that no one caught. Like
Yeah.
there's something strange that happened or something, and
Yeah.
you can't catch that if you're always in the crowd, just following the crowd.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
You get a different awareness that you can ground yourself in before you jump into the crowd, as opposed to the crowd being your grounding of awareness. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. So it seems like you are decently bullish personally on the next couple weeks of Tesla price action. Huh?
Yeah, I am. You know, I, I'm not selling anything. I don't plan to. I think the people, all the short-term front runners, they must have gotten. If they didn't get out today on today's imbalance, what are they thinking? You're right. I mean, this is what they planned for, and they probably made a pretty penny doing it. You'd think, right? So I just don't know who else is out there to sell in a short. If any institution was thinking about selling a big chunk of their portfolio before the end of the year, for example, this would have been the time to do it, like this week and today. And who else is going to be selling? Right?
Yeah.
That's what I keep thinking.
That's so we'll take that side of the story. So you've got maybe an exhaustion of sellers, right?
Yes.
So all the funds who had extra shares that they wanted to get rid of or scalp or
Yeah.
whatever,
There could be some new short speculators that jump in, though. That's
Sure.
true.
Yeah. Yeah, so there could be, I guess, people trying to take advantage of any vulnerability, right, with Tesla. I mean, that's kind of my concern going forward is you have all this, I guess, momentum that's pushed the stock up. I mean, just a few weeks ago, like a month ago, a little over a month ago, we were at 400, right? Right before the S&P 500 inclusion. I think that's the other thing. I think most people, they tend to forget the past. Like today is the day, like this week is the week, like yesterday or last week's stock price is like a million years ago, and we have this thing of humans are able to acclimate themselves so fast. Like you put them into a new house and in a week, they're like, it's their house for like, it feels like their house for like a few years. That's how fast humans acclimate. I think the same thing goes with the stock price. Give people like a week of the stock price and everyone thinks that's the real price.
The new normal.
The new normal. But just a little over a month ago, we were at 400. So we've seen like almost a 70% increase or so just within a little over a month. Like that's not normal,
No,
and
it's not.
it would seem like maybe that price before S&P 500 inclusion, let's say that $400 billion market cap or so, might have been some type of equilibrium of what maybe some investors were viewing this stock worth.
Yeah.
And then you've got this big, 70% increase now, I'd say over 600, maybe $650 billion now. And that's partly because the shares have been contracted, right? The supply of shares. And so you've had this big run of all this force buying, these scalpers, funds trying to front run the index and all this stuff. But my concern is how much of the attitude that Tesla is worth like $650 billion right now versus $400 billion just a month ago, like there seems to be some opportunity where if like Tesla doesn't keep up kind of this momentum of belief, or not even momentum, just this kind of the execution, but also this belief in the stock. If it isn't hit hard by some big news or some shorts or something, maybe it could stay up here. But it just feels like it could be a vulnerable time. I mean that's the thing. I'm thinking maybe not in the next week or two, because there could be this extra buying, etc. I kind of wonder in the next, maybe after a month or two passes or something, after all of this hype, and everyone just is lulled to think, Tesla is now a $700 billion market cap company, and they're lulled into sleep. And then that's like the most vulnerable time, for Tesla. Just some thoughts though.
Yeah, no, I think that's very possible. And we remember the times of Tesla, being much smaller and moving much more volatile. And it's been moving up or down a lot. But now that it's part of the S&P 500, it adds a whole new layer of institutional buyers that are taking positions on in Tesla, and I think that anytime it drops significantly, some of these benchmark funds may increase their position a little bit on Tesla, or get back, may try to buy to be the 1.7% weighting or whatever it is, if they're underweight to begin with. And I just think that the volatility in the stock itself it'll have less of a beta or less volatility than it used to going forward. And there could be a drop, but I don't think it's going to be like a 50% drop again ever, to be honest. I think, in the past we used to see big drops from time to time in Tesla, right? It would, and I just don't see a 50% drop again, maybe 20%, but I don't see a large drop anymore now. That's part of the S&P 500.
Got it. So
unless the whole market's going down 20%, then maybe it goes down 30%.
Sure. In the live stream, I was noticing Steve and Mark Ryan from Solving the Money Problem.
I like that guy.
Yeah. So, hey, Steven, if you are on, hit me up on Skype right now, and we'll get you into this live stream. So that'd be fun to have some other people join. So I'll wait for you if he hears this message. That'd be fun. So I'm curious. I wanted to ask you about this one comment you made that I've been thinking about actually pretty deeply. Is you're saying how this S&P 500 trade for Tesla might just be the last kind of great trade opportunity, right? And maybe with
options.
Yeah. Okay. Especially. With options, maybe ever, right? I mean, that was kind of maybe your
last big opportunity. Yeah. That's how I feel with Tesla.
Yeah, with Tesla. So I wanted to unpack that a little bit because at first I'm like, really? Won't there be like volatility or different things? But I think I'm starting to grasp where you're coming from better. And so I wanted to ask you more about this. So it seems like on one hand, you're saying, the volatility you think will decrease with all these funds in.
Relative to the rest of the market. Yeah. I mean, if the rest of the market's really volatile, then Tesla could obviously too, but anyway.
Got it. And I think part of it, not just S&P, but there's been kind of an attitude shift, to Tesla accepting it more as this mega cap growth company. But then it seems like on the other side, you're seeing that this crazy opportunity for rapid super move, like a super move type of opportunities where you can kind of foresee them in the future. Like that might be hard to find with Tesla, basically. Yeah. Because
it can still happen, but it doesn't seem as evident to me, personally. I mean, it'll probably still happen, hopefully. I just don't know if I'll be able to, guess them with any kind of accuracy if they happen, and I'm not confident they even will happen. Like, I think Tesla will go up, but it'll be much more steady.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I was thinking about it because with your attitude of you're needing to find odds that are in your favor, right? Like, so the market makers are looking at something with slim chances. Let's say that this thing doubles or triples in a relatively short period of time, but you think it's a relatively high possibility. And so going back to end of last year, let's say end of January, end of December, the stock was, let's say, under 400 or so, pre-split. So that's what, $80 now. And in our text conversations, you were kind of, it seemed like you were anticipating a big jump, right? Yes. I mean, we both were anticipating a big jump. I actually personally thought, like, I was super confident of maybe 1,000 to 1,500 stock price.
That
right?
Still would have been seemed crazy back then.
Yeah, it was. I mean, people don't understand like that. Like, I actually did.
Most people were like, would be happy with 500. They'd be like, 500. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think people completely understand the.
And these are pre-split numbers.
Yeah, these are pre-split numbers, of course. Like, I remember I did a post in this Facebook kind of Tesla shareholders group.
Yeah.
And I remember people were talking about Tesla's like next year, 1 year appreciation, and everyone had this really down attitude. Like, they were thinking, oh, it's gonna go up maybe like 100 points, like $500, like go up to 500 or max 600. And I was like, wow, people really like don't see this coming. Right. Yeah. And I remember I posted a poll in the group and I'm like, okay, what's your expectations of the stock price? And literally like 90% or 95% of the people thought it wouldn't break 500 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. They really, we're just looking at the past stock price in a lot of ways. Yeah. But like, I remember, I was confident it would go up a lot, but then in your case, it felt like you saw it even the possibility it going up higher.
Yes.
1,000.
I didn't know it would be so quick, but I knew in a year or two I thought it would be like 1,500 plus, and I didn't know it would go to like 3,000 plus this soon, pre-stock split, right? But I was positioning myself that with leaps and such, at the time, like I think in 1 or 2 years, this stock's going to be revalued and a whole new like price discovery is going to happen with it, and shorts are going to get out, and S&P inclusion will happen. So we had been talking about all these catalyst for years, and I thought 2020 was the year for it to really happen.
Yeah. Because I look back at that and I go, if you were following Tesla and also the financials, you could see that there would be a breakout. I think if you looked at how they're shifting to profitability, their operating leverage, ramping up Model Y. If you worked at the numbers, you could see that there's going to be something big coming. Yeah. And then it seems like with this S&P 500, you could see like, there's a supply shortage, right? Yeah. And a true catalyst. And I think what you're getting at, it seems like perhaps is like going forward, you're not sure if you have the confidence to be able to predict that type of super move with Tesla anymore, because I mean, it's already gone up, right? 10 times in the past year or so.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you have to, it really boils down to market cap, right? And it's like 650 billion market cap or something now, right? I mean, we're talking pretty large market cap now. It's been given, and only a couple companies are above $1 trillion market cap, right? And I think Tesla will get there, justifiably. And even if it gets there really soon, like in another month, I think that could be justified over time, obviously. But for it to like double or triple and get to like 2 trillion market cap, like, or 3 or 4 trillion market cap, like in a year or two, that just seems hard to so the leaps that's why I was doing the leaps before, out of the money leaps. I would not be a buyer of out of the money leaps anymore. And not to say that it won't pan out. It just, to me, is not a good risk reward payoff given the probability I put on it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, this is going to be maybe an unpopular like angle here, but it's just how, like, I think also is once you have such a big move, like a 10x in a short period of time, the odds are against you for it to continue to have rapid appreciation, and I know people who are fans of Tesla and who own the stock, they want it to go up, but the reality is momentum is almost kind of, I want to say against Tesla, but it is a big issue, right?
Yeah, we've had so much momentum. How can you have more, right?
Yeah, exactly. I remember see, this is the interesting thing is like you and I, we go back to the first 10x in a way. Because most people, this is the second kind of major 10x of Tesla, but they don't have the reference point necessarily, most people at least, with the first 10x of Tesla. But with the first 10x of Tesla, in a way, there was a lot of similarities, I think. Like you had this long period of consolidation. So when Tesla went IPO all the way to beginning of 2013, and then, stocks languishing between 20, $30, whatever. And then the other thing is the consolidation period lasts longer than people expect. Like, because at the end of 2012, I'm like, this thing is going to skyrocket like any second, right? You just felt it. Like it was just like going to go berserk.
They had their first deliveries, and they had the Motor Trend Car of the Year award end of 2012, I think, or something. And then it was like the stock still wasn't reacting for several months, really.
Exactly, yeah. And so it was like March and April, and it's still lagging, but Tesla's proved themselves. Everyone who's like really in the know, like feels it's gonna just pop like crazy, right?
It was like it's like a reverse bubble. Like you know, when
exactly.
people go about, there's a bubble, you pop it, and then it tanks. Well, this was like the opposite. It was like, I think of it as like a rubber band pulling back, and then finally someone letting it go. But
exactly. And then it pops, but then like it's gonna pop big, if you're following it closely. Because I remember when it was like it went from 30 to 50, and then May 8th, 2013, it just had Tesla reported their first GAAP profit, and then we saw it jump to 70, and then it quickly went up to over 100. And I remember it was at this Tesla Motors Club conference. There was this guy who was there who was this crazy trader. I mean, the story is he supposedly had traded, all these traded Tesla options to the point where he claimed to have like something crazy, like 10% of the float out there in option, like controlling, with options and stuff. So he made a killing, but he owned a Model S and he was a Tesla fan, but he couldn't put his head around the valuation at Tesla at around $130. Like that was the price at the conference when we were there. Yeah. And he's just like, this is way overvalued, and he's like, it's going to go down. And I remember I spent the night, my wife was with me and we're talking with him, and I'm like, we put everything into Tesla and I'm writing this. I think 130 is, I think this is a big winner. I'm not going to cash out anything at this point. Yeah. And he was trying to convince me for about 2 hours, say you've got to sell, a good portion of this because this is overvalued. And I remember the feeling that the whole appreciation had when you went up, like during the up thing, I remember feeling like this could go higher, right? Like if you really had your pulse on it. But then when it hit like 300 super fast, like in 2014, I think it was, that's when I felt like, it's like, I think it's still fast.
Yeah. Because it was 300 for like one day and then it tanked back down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
this
is kind of fast. It was a 10X, and I appreciated the long underappreciated like time frame, or many years, and then I appreciated the rubber band effect up. But once it went really high, I kind of had the sense of like, ooh, this is kind of high. And so I figured like we might be resting a little bit, for a while. I didn't expect the consolidation to last that long. I thought 2018 would be the breakout year, but Tesla had its own, issues with 2018. But it seems like the same effect. You've had this depressed Tesla stock price, right?
Very similar.
Yeah, very similar. In 2018, it should have, it's almost like in late 2012 to early 2013, Tesla won the Model S, or the Motor Trend Car of the Year. Yeah. Everyone's loving this car. It's like a no-brainer, right?
The first EV that people really wanted to drive.
Exactly.
Desired. Yeah.
And it seems like going into 2019, it's like Tesla has broken the production challenges. They've successfully ramped Model 3. They're going to ramp Model Y, but people still are so skeptical. They're just stuck, acclimated
and
to
you
the
you and I saw early on like the setup for this, because the Model Y reveal, they almost made it underwhelming on purpose because they don't want to cannibalize Model 3. And I think you had a good read on that. Were you at that event, the Model Y event?
Yeah.
And I think you told me something like, it's a pretty good car, the back seat I'm not sure about. And I think I didn't go to that event, But I think we both realized like, hey, this Model Y could be a killer car too, and they're just, of course, they have to downplay it. But so that's kind of going into the end of 2019. This Model Y is about to go. Yeah. So anyway, keep
Yeah.
going. What were you
Yeah.
saying?
So you've got this depressed thing, and then you've got this like rubber band effect. Now Tesla's just gone up like 10x, let's say, in a little more than 12 months. I mean, this is probably a bigger move than the 2013 move in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are loving it. They're, counting their portfolio as it just seems like, I'm happy for it, obviously. Like this is something that, I've been anticipating and I share in the joy and all, but I look at it as like, hey, we were depressed before and we shot up, and I'm writing that up because I believe in the long-term future of Tesla, especially I believe in robotaxi. I don't think this is fully, understood by most people, but I'm also very cognizant. The higher the stock price goes, I understand that, hey, we are up here, this isn't like 2019 anymore or 2012, 13 anymore. This is in the higher stratospheres. And so sure, it could consolidate at this level. It could go up a bit too, but I don't know, probability wise, I mean, I kind of look at the vast majority of probabilities. Maybe we're stuck in a range of maybe, let's say four
Maybe
or five.
the range will be 600 to 1,000, or maybe it'll be 500 to 700. We don't know, but I think there's
some
going to be a
type
range
of
bound
range.
for years.
Exactly, right? Something where it goes back and forth, and then it kind of tires people out. It just exhausts them because they're so hopeful for it to break out or the shorts to break it down, and just pulls out all of the momentum and energy from most people, and that's when I think maybe there might be an interesting trade at the end of that.
Yeah,
We'll see.
this is the time to start selling those covered calls out of the money or something. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Is deep out of the money. I'll dip my toe into that type of trade just with selling those deep out of the money covered calls probably when the dust settles from this S&P inclusion.
I was wondering with those calls, are you gonna? I know you have your common shares.
Yes.
Right. So I think it's like 40,000 or so. Then you have the leaps, which are deep in the money, controlling like 60 something thousand shares worth. Will you sell covered calls on just the leaps? Because you have to sell them anyways. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, no, I was thinking I might, because the leaps are deep in the money at this point. So I might take assignment of them on margin, and hold them for at least a year, because you have to hold them. The holding period starts again at that point, so you have to hold them for a year from that point forward when you take assignment for at least a year in order to have long-term treatment on it. And so the shares I hold now, I'll sell some covered calls on maybe half of those or something like that, deep out of the money, because half those shares I bought are after the dip in March or April. I bought more, and so they're not long-term yet. And if you try to sell covered calls on shares you don't hold long-term yet, then it kind of resets the holding period for those shares again. So I'm just going to sell covered calls on some of the shares I own long-term so far. Yeah, That's my plan.
Yeah.
What about you? Are you thinking about selling any covered calls or doing something like that to maximize the return?
I hate selling covered calls personally because of the anxiety that my shares could be, exercised or taken away. And like, I don't like that uncertainty. Not just that, because I'm so long-term, like I want these shares for a long time. I'd rather,
I mean, I'm long-term too. Do you ever think like, let's say you had 10,000 shares and, that's a lot. And you said, okay, well, that's most of my wealth and I'm happy with that. But it'd be nice to diversify and sell 1,000 or 2,000 shares to, do other stuff, maybe invest in other stocks or whatever. But I'm not sure when I want to sell it. So like Tesla's at $680. Would you sell covered calls on like the 2,000 shares that you're open to selling for like 1,000 strike or 900 strike, like 3 months out? So it's like almost like a limit order. So price goes up to 900, you're selling as a limit order. But even if that doesn't happen, you're collecting a premium of a covered call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how I think of it.
I mean, I'd be open to, like, that's the thing, is there's a lot of energy that's required as well. Like I would be more open to selling cover calls like on a week or two out, right? Maybe a good 150 or 200 bucks out of the money, but then I'm not going to be making that much, off of these short-term out of the money calls. But if I go further out, like 3 to 6 months, I feel like that in a way holds that amount of money captive, where if I wanted to diversify or had another big kind of investment opportunity I was looking for, I feel like it's kind of like what you mentioned before, that Occam's razor, having the simplest approach. I feel like if I'm looking to go and invest in something or find something big or bigger, let's say, than what I have in Tesla, I feel like I should just sell some at the right time and make it simple. Yeah, I'm selling some and I'm gonna go into something. Yeah, maybe I don't even have that something yet.
Yeah.
But I feel like the simplest thing is, I'm gonna make a decision, a clear decision. This is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna go for this decision. To me, that brings down the complexity. Because once I start adding this middle step of having to of trying to pick up some income, and to sell cover calls, now you've got this whole other variable in the picture. It's not just your Tesla shares, and it's not just trying to diversify. And I feel like, this is one thing I've been thinking about a lot this past week, is the whole concept of simplification. And I feel like sometimes when people see their assets grow, they start to get more complicated in how they approach their assets. So like, 5% here, 2% here, 10% over here. And they get all complicated where you don't even know where everything is, And you have so many different purposes and things. So I was discussing this with my wife at length this past week. And I'm like, I think if I could do something where I have such a simplified approach to things, that could be a huge advantage. Just to have all of my thinking into one approach, not to have it all convoluted, right? And I think a lot of times, one of the challenges I find after a certain level of, let's say, assets that have grown, is the challenges, and this is just my personal observation. A lot of people, after a certain level of assets, they start to fear losing it. Therefore, they try to put, they justify different things. They go, if I get this nice beachfront house or something, it's always beachfront and oceanfront and great, and it's going to be an investment for the next generation or something. Okay, we'll do this. And they do this thing, right? Or this property or this, where those investments might be okay, but they're sabotaging the person's ability to really exponentially grow their wealth over time, because of the fear of them losing it. They're starting to make compromised decisions in some ways, which, each person's situation is different, of course. But if the goal is to continue to exponentially grow your assets, hypothetically, because obviously that's not going to be the goal for most people at a certain point. But if you did have that goal to continue to exponentially multiply your assets, then you're going to have to find a way to hack, I think, the preservation of wealth syndrome that almost 99% of the people go through at a certain point, And that's what I'm kind of focusing a lot of my attention on. It's there's an opportunity to exponentially grow.
To keep growing it like you have been.
Yeah, but it's
on a percentage basis.
Exactly.
Which would be incredible.
And I think the greatest obstacle to it is psychological.
I agree.
It's seeing the amount as this huge amount that you are scared to lose, and also I think it's this complexity involved too, where you veer away from what you were doing before that was working. And that's my personal, concern with selling in the money, or selling cover calls. It just seems like it's not, it's taking away my energy from what I could be focusing on that could really exponentially grow, assets in the future.
Yeah. The only reason I do it is because I would think I'm so concentrated in Tesla. It's 95% of my worth at this point, or 90%, or, and it's a lot. Right. And, I wouldn't mind being 50% or 80% even maybe, but I should probably free up some of that do some other. So,
Yeah.
I could sell covered calls as like income. You have real estate, maybe income.
Yeah.
I don't have real estate income. And for me, it's a way to generate income. And at the same time, put a limit price on where I'd be happy selling a small portion of my Tesla.
Yeah.
So it's sort of simple for me for
Sure.
two birds with one stone,
Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
speak.
Like, I mean, I do think about like diversifying somewhat, selling 10 or 20% of my position to try to do something like with that to grow. Like the idea is like Tesla, I foresee continuing to grow long term. I don't know, what's going to happen in the next year or 2 or 3 years, but over the long term, I have this confidence. I want to stick with it, but I kind of wonder if I could take 10 or 20% and grow it into as much as my 80%. So let's say the 80% I have in Tesla does hypothetically a 10x in 10 or 15 years. Like, what if I could grow that 10 or that, let's say 20% I take out to become as big or bigger than my Tesla portion, right?
Yeah.
And if it's in other companies or other things, right? So I do think about that a lot. And it's something I actually, I've been talking about this exact thing with my wife, like almost every day, like for a couple hours every day. I do think though, like one of the things I tell her is, we have X number of shares, and I say, okay, this equals a certain percent of the company, right? Like I've always thought about that, like of how much
you mentioned
percent,
that in some of
what
your
percent of the
podcasts.
company I own. Say this is equal to this percent of the company, and I say in 2030 or so around there, Tesla will be producing hypothetically 20 million cars. Right.
Yeah.
And let's say if we own a certain percent, like how many of those cars will be our cars that we can claim the profit for? Right?
Yeah.
And so I tell my wife, so I go, hey, we own this so whatever percent. Therefore, we claim that percent of all of the cars coming off of the line of Tesla. And for each car that comes off the line, let's say the average selling price is $30,000, and let's say the profit is $5,000 hypothetically, including full self-driving. I don't know, it could be more, could be less, but let's say $5,000. So I claim that $5,000 per car that I own of Tesla's, production in 2030. And so I'm calculating it for her. I'm saying, okay, so we own this many cars in 2030 production, and each of the cars makes us this $5,000. So I'm calculating out, this is how much profit we're claiming in 2030 for Tesla if we just hold on to these shares, if we just don't, liquidate these shares. And it's kind of mind-blowing, actually, if you work out the numbers.
20 million is a lot of cars. That's a lot.
Yeah, you get actually, it depends on what percent you own, obviously. But
and that just counts the car. It doesn't count the robo-taxi revenue and all the other, like they'll have electric vehicle takeoff and landing, jets probably by, all this other stuff they'll be doing.
So I look at that figure in 2030 and it's a great figure, like I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. Most people don't believe it, that's going to happen, right? And that's why, they might not, see the value in Tesla long term, but that's what I always weigh kind of my investment decisions on. I go, okay, if I pull money out of Tesla, I've got to pull money off of that, the claim on the 2030 production right, of these many cars. So I'm giving up X amount of cars, right? And it's not just in 2030, it's every year that Tesla produces cars, I claim that amount, that percent amount every single year that Tesla's in existence. That's a fantastic claim to have, right? That's the power of being a shareholder, And I was telling my wife actually last night, I'm like, there's something about being a shareholder also that's great. Is you don't have to deal with, like with real estate, you have to deal with like tenants, you have to deal with these like lawsuits possibly, you have to deal with like, all sorts of issues, and I'm like, this is great. Like you don't have to deal with any of that. Because Tesla has their own legal team. They take care of all the lawsuits. They take care of all the messy stuff, right? People complaining, etc. I don't need to deal with any of that stuff, right? I'm just like totally shielded from that. And I'm but yet I get a claim of a certain percent of all of the cars that come off the line, right? Every year, at least a claim to that profit. I'm like, man, there's something amazing about,
That is pretty amazing
yeah,
thinking of it that way. Yeah.
it's
I mean,
crazy.
10 years, it's going to be I think for sure. I mean, we've been saying for a long time, we think it'll be the biggest company in the world. And Elon's said that a few times. And people, I think the first time he mentioned $1 trillion market cap or the biggest company in the world, I think it was one of the earnings calls in like 2014 or 15. Do you remember that? It was an earnings
Yeah.
call, and he was talking to one of the analysts, like, I think we could be one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah,
And I think everyone laughed at that, but like you and
exactly.
I and other believers, we believed it. We're like,
Yeah,
oh, I
yeah,
think he's gonna. I think that's true, and we latched onto that, and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and sure enough, Elon's seems to always be right, and yeah, he says 20 million. What did he say? 20 million cars in 2030.
Yeah.
So people might laugh at that now, but he's been right time and again on these things.
Yeah, it's what's cool. What's funny is Elon. What most people don't realize with Elon, and I think like you and I and others catch it is, Elon. He thinks a lot before he says certain things. Like he's not just saying, "Oh, I think Tesla can be one of the largest companies in the world because
Yeah,
I think so." Right? He's
yeah,
actually worked out the numbers,
yeah.
right? And
I agree. And when
and
people disagree
yeah,
with him, like I don't think they realize how mistaken they most likely are. Like he's like probably like the smartest guy in the world. Who knows? He might be. Like this guy's incredible. Like you're gonna disagree with the smartest guy in the world, really? You know better than him about his own business or about anything in general. And so it's funny when I see people like not believe him or disagree with him and what he's saying. Like he's not. Sometimes his timelines are a little optimistic, but it seems like he always does what he says he's gonna do.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the other thing is like when Elon says like 20 million cars in 2030,
Yeah.
like that's the thing. The skeptics and other people will say, oh, whatever. But he's actually thought a lot about it.
I'm
He's
sure
not,
he's got it all worked out in his
yeah,
head. Yeah, he's got
he's not going to say 20 million cars just because it's an off the cuff, just,
yeah.
pipe dream,
Yeah.
you know? Elon
Yeah.
doesn't have these pipe dreams, you know?
No.
Like,
Yeah, he's
yeah.
talking about terawatt, how many terawatts needs, what energy density. You hear him talk about going into detail. He knows
Yeah,
every detail of what he's saying.
exactly. Like Elon's pipe dream, let's say of digging tunnels underneath cities, like it actually is a real thing. Yeah, it's like for most people that'd be like crazy pipe dream. For Elon, it's like his
Yeah.
whole mentality is he only wants to think about and use energy on things that actually have possibilities, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to solve stuff, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't get that about Elon,
Yeah.
but
I
he's
think
really
that's what
serious
you
about
and
this
I
stuff.
and other people, latched onto early. Like you mentioned, you watched a lot of his videos early on to kind of get a feel, and I did too. And I think early on, whether it was 2012 or 2013, 11, 12, or 13, when we started watching all that stuff about his interviews, and I pretty quickly realized this guy is brilliant. He's done a lot of stuff in the past. He's going to keep doing stuff. Like he's the smartest guy in the room on like everything,
Yeah,
and if you can find the smartest guy in the room, like the goal is not to be the smartest guy. I mean, that's okay. But if you can locate or identify who the smartest guy in the room is on whatever the topic is, that's a huge advantage. And I think, we identified Elon as the smartest guy in the room on like everything he's involved in early on, hydrogen fuel cells. He's been saying that for years, and you still have like Nikola. How did that get popular? Like, I don't know. It's just crazy that people still even push hydrogen fuel cells at all, and
yeah.
it just, all these things, it's like some people just don't realize. They think he's just like a normal CEO or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do kind of think that maybe the pendulum might swing the other way at some point in time, where,
Mm,
I mean, up until this point, I feel, yeah, people don't take his insights as seriously as probably they should. But yeah, it seems like there might be a time where people go the other side, where
take it too
or
seriously.
something. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I can't pinpoint the feeling I have about it, but it seems like it's still very early on in
It is.
Elon's bigger life impact and journey.
Yeah.
As long as he's able to stay healthy and etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you think about what could happen 15 or 20 years down the road, right? I mean, it's like Elon is already probably the second richest person in the world now after today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably just a matter of time before,
He's
he
the richest,
eclipses
and then I mean, and he'll
Jeff
be
Bezos. But then like,
setting up a Mars colony and all this stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then he just doesn't have Tesla. He's got SpaceX and other stuff. So he's going to eclipse the world's richest person by maybe
A
many
lot.
times. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not
He
going to
might be
be a,
double plus the next richest person.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I would imagine like, yeah, he could be, I would imagine he'd be the first trillionaire,
Yeah.
And I think at a certain point, yeah, yeah, I don't know what will happen with it.
The pendulum could swing. Yeah, there could be enough believe. Like right now, it's still early days, like you said. Like we have a whole group of us, a tribe of us on Twitter and
Yeah.
blogs and diehard Tesla fans, owners and such. But you still look at the mainstream media, and there's a lot of doubt about Tesla still, a lot of negativity, and I think eventually that'll turn around, and that narrative will change to be like Tesla's the real deal. It's like like the way Apple is looked at now in mainstream media.
Yeah. I wanted to take some questions here. If you guys have a question in the live stream, go ahead and just put question in all caps. And we'll go ahead and try taking a few questions here. Actually, I wanted to ask you one thing. So
Sure.
stock price, after hours is 672 or so right now.
Yep.
Your portfolio is probably at its highest point ever, right?
Probably. Yeah, I think so.
With this rise today.
Yep.
So you've had this crazy year, and like as we go into the weekend, like how are you processing it? Do you have any, like, do you celebrate at all, or are you cautious in your celebration? Like what is
Cautious.
your idea?
Cautious. Yeah. I try to be cautious, and yeah, we have a little miniature trip with my wife and kids, and mom and mother-in-law were going to somewhere where there's like snow and stuff. I don't know if they know yet, but my kids are in the other rooms to be careful. But so we had that planned for a couple months now, so that's exciting. But yeah, in terms of the portfolio, I'm just cautious because I've seen a number of times in the years where the portfolio goes up to some high number where you're like, wow, that's exciting, and then it gets cut down significantly like the next week, and it doesn't return for months or years. So I'm cautious. I've learned my lesson not to just keep this number in mind, and I haven't even looked at it at the end of today.
Yeah.
Like we talked about earlier, I haven't looked at my portfolio value at the end of today, and I might not until next week. Yeah.
Ken says, why aren't you guys smiling? So I think it's what you're saying, actually. Like I totally resonate with it, man. I've been through so many ups and downs. It's kind of it's hardened me in a way where it just I can't celebrate the ups in the very beginning, like the first.
There's a down right around the corner.
Exactly.
You just don't know if it's next week or the week after, or a few weeks. But there's going to be a down, and you just want to prepare yourself for it.
Exactly. Like the trick. Like you've been tricked once too many times.
Yeah.
And there's a certain level to get excited, or you can appreciate it to a certain level, but if you go too much beyond that level, you're going to be smacked around, right?
Yeah, you're going to really have a emotionally down day pretty soon if you go too high.
Yeah, so it's kind of like this trained reflex, right? It's like I can get a little, only to a certain point, right? And then it's just cut off. It's just numb. It's completely numb. Like there's no feelings beyond that point.
It used to motivate me for my job when I was working. I'd be all up, and then it would go down, and I'd be so upset, but I'd be like, oh, now I better work 80 hours a week this week on my normal job because it really matters now. So it used to motivate me for that, but it's funny.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm looking after hours. It's like 675. I'm looking at the volume, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
some big spikes in the 1 hour chart of like 300,000 shares plus a few prints at like 695 showing up. But I think they're just late fills being printed, shown to the tape that might have been done earlier at the close. I don't know what the deal is, but the chart is showing like some big fills at 695 or around there for like 300,000 shares, but it's not trading there obviously. But it's interesting that
Yeah.
there's all these like late fills coming in after hours. I feel like that were done earlier near the close or at the close. So Monday's going to be super exciting to see what happens. It's just helping me get excited for seeing what's happening.
Interesting. Someone says, do you think Elon Musk will put some surplus cash into Bitcoin?
I don't think so. I mean, he's talked about he's not a believer in Bitcoin, right? I mean, he's talked
He's
about
been
it a couple
skeptical over the
times.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's also one thing that's had me skeptical. Like, here's this guy smarter than anyone else, and he doesn't really think long term it has a future. Like, who am I to think he doesn't know that? Like, he's clearly thought through things, So he could be wrong, of course, but of anyone who's going to be wrong, he's probably the least likely in the world to be wrong on anything almost at this point, So, it doesn't mean he's not wrong, but
like I've watched all of Elon's stuff, and he's mentioned Bitcoin several times. Most people don't probably know all of the times he's mentioned it, but he's been rather skeptical.
The security is his main thing, right?
No, I mean, actually, the last interview with Kathy Wood, Kathy Wood was kind of pushing this optimistic view, and he just kind of was like, maybe, I don't know, it's kind of ambivalent. But before that, he actually had an interview where he was saying that he doesn't think Bitcoin is, I mean, he did, well, and he basically said he doesn't think Bitcoin is going to be the database of the future for money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard that one.
Yeah.
That was in that German interview, or what?
I forget. It
was recently. That was just a few weeks ago, right?
Or maybe that was that one. But there was one a few years ago that he kind of went more in depth with a bit. But I've thought a lot about it, and I think I completely understand where Elon is coming from. I mean, he's looking at it from first principles, and he's saying, Bitcoin has an efficiency problem. Because it's decentralized, they have to have all this computing power to validate every transaction, and that kills it for being a possibility of being the database for all transactions, right? Because the database of all transactions is going to be super efficient. It has to be. And so because Bitcoin can't be the database for all transactions, now Bitcoin is relegated to a fringe database, meaning it's not the main ledger for all transactions. So what does that mean? It means it's something else. It's not the main database for money. And when Elon looks at it, he's like, yeah, that's pretty obvious to him. It's like anyone who looks at Bitcoin will see it's obvious. Like it can't be the main database for
money,
for all transactions. Yeah. And you could twist and turn and try to make a case for Bitcoin as so-called digital gold and all these other cases, but it's not the database of
money.
And
I don't think it'll be database for money either. But digital gold, I just don't know if there is a digital gold. How could Bitcoin not be it? That's what I always think. But maybe there won't be a digital gold. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, even digital gold. I mean, I think the S&P 500 can act as, in a way,
digital gold.
Like digital gold. If you just, for example, have some type of way to, I used the S&P 500 not as a real example, but just as a theoretical example, because I think it's going to be much more actually better and complex with lots of different assets. But, if you can somehow, peg your digital database to some really desirable, productive assets like the S&P 500, and you're giving out, that currency because it's pegged. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to solve, I think, the problems that Bitcoin is trying to solve. But yeah, I guess for another day. Another question: Tesla, can they acquire SpaceX, Neuralink, and Boring Company to combine these resources for Mars City? What are your thoughts?
It's interesting. And I think we've talked about how Elon once mentioned that he wants to create a holding company, or he thought about that years ago. I don't know if he's brought that up anytime recently, but who knows if Tesla would be that holding company? It's possible, but I don't think it's likely. I think he's keeping them somewhat separate. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, it's probably separate, but I mean, I've always had this suspicion that he's he's kept the x.com domain name that he got from eBay or
Hmm.
PayPal or something. Um, I've always had the suspicion that was that could be a possible holding company, for Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, and Neuralink, and
Hmm.
you just call the company X, right? Um, and like it could make sense in some ways to me, and yeah, I would love it, if we had it all combined. I think there could be some cool kind of synergies. Um,
Yeah, that'd be
but
neat. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, he's mentioned referenced Tesla in the long run being like the cash cow, I think was the
yeah,
term he used a couple of times. And I think he envisions it as like the company that's going to generate a ton of cash and dividends that he can use to help fund, SpaceX going forward to and also I think the satellite, the internet, the Starlink is a
mhm,
big deal for him in terms of funding SpaceX's future operations, right? I mean,
yeah, definitely,
I think his ultimate goal is to build a self-sustaining civilization on Mars. That's his top priority, and
yeah,
he's just trying
yeah.
to work his way backwards from there the best way he can.
Yeah, definitely. Question is, what's your advice for a new investor? Invest X amount of money after your monthly salary comes in, or 50% in investments and gold, 50% in cash? Huh.
Hmm.
Not sure if I
Yeah, no,
completely
I think
understand it.
yeah, you want to keep some cash on the side and
Mm,
wait for the market to drop to reinvest. I always tell friends and family are like, "Oh, I have this cash. What should I buy? Tesla? Should I buy this?" And I always tell people like, "Yeah, you should put in, an X percent now that you're comfortable with because markets are at all-time highs, but save a certain percent, whether it's 50% or 70% or 25%, just save a certain amount of cash on the side, waiting for the next dip to use it, because
mm,
you don't want to buy it. No one wants to be the person buying at the top, at the local top, and then, so the dollar cost averaging is a good option for people.
mm,
If you look that up, dollar cost averaging, I think that's a good way to save and invest.
mhm. Yeah, like I have a difficult time answering questions like this because my thinking and approach is just so different than than,
Yeah,
than
yeah,
conventional.
yeah. You
Like,
haven't been like classically trained. Like I have gone through that stuff for my licenses in the past and stuff. So I have
yeah,
some of that residue in my head. But you
yeah.
you come to you have a whole new kind of approach that's kind of different.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I try not to give like, advice because my advice or my thinking is just people, I mean, it just I don't know how people can process it because it's just like for example, and it probably won't apply to most people too. That's the problem with my thinking.
Yeah.
But I'm like, my whole thing is if you get into investing, you want to like have an edge. You want to know what your competitive advantage is. You want to be able to hack the system in a way, right?
Yeah.
Like one example is if you're starting a new company, you just don't want to go out and start any company and just think you just don't want to create a job for yourself, right? Like you want to go out and start something that really has a need and can grow and you want to and sure there are times where you need that experience and you just go ahead and start a few businesses and fail and start or whatever, but I think with investing the typical traditional approach is yeah just go ahead open an account and start investing and subscribe to some newsletters, check out some books and websites, and you'll learn along the way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I look at that and there's something about it where I'm like my approach should be more like why don't you I mean this is not advice to specific people but to myself, let's say, I'd be like, if you're starting out, why don't you take a couple years and like why don't you, and this is again, tough to handle, but why don't you just read a few hundred investing books? why don't you
Yeah.
why don't you locate the best of the best investors out there, understand their philosophies, how they have the edge, see if there's anything that you can grasp that you can clearly replicate that advantage, you know
You know
and
what I was thinking? Your advantage is, Dave. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
sure.
You've described a number of times like your thought process on things,
Yeah.
and I think what's different from you and a lot of other analyst type people is you do more like you look at the statements and the financial statements, but you're looking at these as businesses and like what business do I want to invest in, like as if it's a
Mhm.
business that's not publicly traded, like as if it's just like a small business restaurant or something. Like
Sure.
you're going to want to talk to the owner, you want to experience the food. You want to talk to the customers, you want to find out the location. Is it going to be, so you're doing all the deep dive research, like as if it was a small business you were investing in, except these are publicly traded stocks, and other people, advisors or investors, a lot of times they just look at pieces of paper or charts, and they make their decisions based on that. They don't even use the product. So they don't even look at it as businesses. They look at it as like, all right, this PE ratio is this, so it should go there. And this, they kind of have their own, practices they're used to, but it's not looking at it as actual businesses they're investing in, taking a piece of ownership as. Like you talk about having a piece of ownership of it, and I don't see other people talking about it that way.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. If you look at it as you're picking out investing in a business, like, do you want to pick out an average business to invest in? Like an average mom and pop business, like
of course not.
You're gonna get slaughtered, right? It's like I remember during my summer RV trip, we're going through these towns of like 5,000 people, 10,000 people. I'm looking around at the businesses, and there's some chains like CVS or Chevron or McDonald's, but it's hard to find a business that is like a generational company. Like completely,
that's innovative. That like, oh, this
exactly.
store looks amazing. I'd love to have a piece of this thing.
Exactly,
like even if it's a mom and pop shop or something.
Exactly, yeah.
Really go off the ground.
Exactly. I can go through a town of 300 businesses, and I don't know if I'll even find one business maybe where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is 100xer. You know what I'm saying? And I think when people get into business or investing, they don't think like that. Like, and I think that's how you need to approach it. Like, you've got to find that 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 business that's unlike all the other businesses that are very average or above average, because you're just going to be wasting your time. Like, you need to find that crazy 0.1%, that outlier, that's completely outside the second standard, third standard deviation. And you need to and the problem is you need to spend a lot of time like looking for companies and failing to find that company. And you need to have a lot of time to build those skills to analyze, like, what is that crazy outlier? What makes an outlier? How do I find that outlier? And like, I feel like traditional investing, like, it sabotages that process, because people give this advice. Oh yeah, just open an account and throw money at some names that you like. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, that's like, I can't fathom, like, that doesn't register to me. I'm like, it's like going out to some local town and throwing your $100 bills to any local business out there that, and expecting your investments to do great. I'm like, wow, there's like something going on there.
It's something, it's very different than what you do. Yeah.
That's why, like, when I give advice, it's more like, hey, get to the real thing, the real essence of investing, which is you want to find that 1 out of 10,000 that business.
Yeah. Find out, like,
exactly.
I think that's a good way to think of it. Like, if this was a friend of yours, if this was someone you knew asking, and you had an opportunity to invest in their business, it's a small business, let's say, would you invest a significant part of your savings in that small business? And if you think it's going to grow, or would you just, look at some pieces of paper and decide from there, or would you want to talk to the person and figure out all the details about, like, the opportunity at, with the customers and satisfaction of customer, so there's a lot more to it than just the traditional stock picking I think people do.
Yeah, definitely. Here's an interesting question. Mind thought. Who is another luminary type of thinker out there on the leading edge? Not the next Elon, but the next somebody else.
That's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to think about it. Do you have any thoughts that come to mind?
Like, I personally, I have a hard time like finding people.
Me too.
Because part of it is, I feel like I like people who can put together thoughts from like new insights, new angles. Like, they look at something and you're like, whoa, I never thought about it like that, right? It's like and the way they do it, I think, is they look at it from different like points of view, right? They have a diverse background, and then come up with stuff. But one of the things I'm noticing lately in the past 4 or 5 years is I feel like there's such a political movement, and the politicization of of thought is grown so much that, for example, you can't talk about COVID without it getting into a political thing, right?
Yeah.
You can't,
Yeah.
there's so many things that it's just so, it becomes like this political bent on things where I'm like, where are the people out there who can be detached from that in a sense, can look at things without that bent and really come up with, some original insights. And I fear like I catch this a lot lately. Like some people who I thought had a lot of that, they just get into more of a political kind of hole that they're in and they can't get out of that. And yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I'd love to hear, if people have comments, who.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what other people say. Yeah. I mean, some people say the guy that runs Shopify, I can't remember his name, or Peter Thiel, these are some of the people, Jack Dorsey, there's a lot of people names I think that are in the conversation, but personally, I don't know which one. I haven't done enough vetting to kind of decide or have a good opinion on one or the other.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Emmett, I'm getting thirsty. I think you're pretty tired too. So I want to thank you. Actually, I want to thank everyone on the live stream.
Yeah,
it's always fun.
Thanks for doing it all. Yeah, putting it together and organizing this, Dave. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah. It's always fun chatting with you. It's always fun joining. I mean, it's like a common experience. There's Tesla and what they're doing and investing. There's so many things that I think are fascinating to observe and to chat. Like if I'm just by myself, it's hard to to get super
hard
excited.
To bring things up. But you and I think we have a good rapport. We can kind of bring things out in each other.
And then we got a lot of people in the community all supporting discussions and wanting to be part of it. So I definitely appreciate everyone. So anyways, we'll go ahead and talk later, and then have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. We're going to see what happens Monday, and exciting times. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Take care, Emmett. We'll see you.
All right, Dave. For sure.